Hey, welcome back, everybody. Hope we're having an all right start to the day out there. And unfortunately, we've still got Hurricane Beryl to talk about, and in a big way for a lot of folks. And unfortunately, some of the model trends overnight and this morning have not been kind to some of our friends back out towards Texas, Louisiana, and the Yucatan Peninsula, and definitely down for Jamaica as well, if anybody is watching from that area. Really, all signs are pointing to Beryl, maybe starting that turn a little sooner, jogging a little bit further north than originally anticipated, and also so far really struggling to weaken as well, which is, obviously its own problem. Now, the good news is I think throughout today, Beryl definitely shouldn't get much stronger, should begin a weakening trend throughout the day and then into the next couple of days. But I definitely don't think this is the end of Beryl's impacts on anybody once it gets past Jamaica and even past the Yucatan. I think we could have more problems potentially on down the horizon. So I'm going to break all that down for you in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. We are getting pretty close to 10,000 here, and it's a big goal that we have on the channel. And obviously, thank you to everyone who already has subscribed, and especially those of you that come back and watch every video. Does mean a lot to me, and one of the big reasons I continue to post these videos, even during kind of busier days and busier time frames. So again, very appreciated from all of you, means the world. I think with all that said, I don't want to ramble on too much. Let's go ahead and start talking about what you're seeing kind of behind me here with this satellite loop. And getting right into it, Hurricane Beryl is not hard to find. This is a very strong Category 5 hurricane. Winds currently sitting at 165 miles an hour. So this storm is no longer just barely a Category 5. It's, getting pretty well up in there into the intensity range for Category 5 storms. Now, again, Beryl started all the way back out here into the ITCZ zone, into the middle of the Atlantic there, began to strengthen and hit major hurricane status before getting towards the southern Antilles here, and now getting well into the Caribbean and holding on to that Category 5 strength. Now, looking at this map, all clear for everywhere ahead of Beryl, not really much thunderstorm activity, but you'll notice Jamaica here, the Yucatan Peninsula here, and then the Mexico and Texas, Louisiana coastline, all in the general path of this storm. So that's something we're going to need to watch. And in fact, even on the northern end, portions of the United States here in Puerto Rico, already being impacted by, some showers and storms with Beryl. Now, the good news is, right now, the wind field is very compact with this storm, so all of those hurricane force winds are still offshore of any islands out here. But again, that could change here in the next coming days. So looking at Beryl on infrared satellite right now, these colors that you're seeing showed cloud top temperature, and kind of the brighter the color, or the scarier the color, I guess, if you will here, the colder the cloud tops, just meaning the higher the storm and the stronger the storm. And you'll notice we've got plenty of those very cold cloud tops wrapping right around the center here of Beryl. As it continues its track up towards the north and eventually off towards the northwest here within the next coming days. So again, just a very impressive storm on satellite, and this is about as textbook of a Category 5 storm as you can get. Now, I do expect the overall structure of this storm to slowly degrade a little bit here throughout the day today and through the coming days, as we are going to eventually start to work into some wind shear, and I'll show you that in just a second. But let me pause the satellite loop here, just so I can draw on it a little bit more. And I'll move my head out the way as well here. But again, eye right here of the storm. Obviously, we are still seeing this very strong convective banding kind of here along the eye. But notice how we're getting some, lighter colors showing up now here on portions of the, outer end of Beryl. We're going to eventually run into some very strong, or at least moderate, maybe not very strong, but strong enough southwesterly shear that we're going to kind of begin to, rip some of these cloud tops away from the storm a little bit. And I think you're already beginning to see the start of that. What that is also going to do is, some drier air into the storm. The storm is moving towards a pocket of drier air, and I think we're seeing some of that already kind of getting ingested into the storm a little bit here. So again, we should really be near a peak intensity right now. This peak intensity is held on maybe a tad longer than we thought, maybe about 12 hours more or longer than we expected, but Again, an overall weakening trend, or at least, limiting any more strengthening, should begin today, and especially getting into tonight and tomorrow. And again, as I said, wind shear is one reason for that, but another reason is dry air. I'll kind of circle a couple areas here. Notice these areas that are a little more black in nature or just darker colored. These are pockets of some drier air showing up on our satellite loop, water vapor loop here to be specific. And that is not very conducive for hurricane strengthening. So, again, Beryl has kind of created its own perfect environment here. But I think eventually that luck is going to run out a little bit. Again, some of that shear likely going to, allow a little bit of dry air to get funneled in. And even here on the backside, you're noticing a little bit of this dry air kind of trying to ingest its way into the storm just a little bit more. Now, right now, not very much in nature, but any kind of weakening that we can get is obviously a good sign for this storm. All right, latest track from the National Hurricane Center. They've done a pretty great job so far forecasting this thing, and I think so far their current forecast is good as well. There's a couple things I will mention with the forecast that could be wild cards, but one big shift we saw overnight is a trend northward in the models, specifically for our friends in the short term over Jamaica. Now the entire island of Jamaica in that cone, meaning this storm very likely could go right over the island itself. Which will be something we absolutely need to watch out for. Again, and impacts for Jamaica, at least direct impacts, likely to be tomorrow afternoon. So we've really only got about 24 hours or so to weaken this storm enough that those impacts near Jamaica are limited. And right now, forecast is for a major Category 3 hurricane to be either making landfall on the island or potentially just south of the island. But really going to be a pretty close call there. And again, that weakening trend due to that dry air and shear that I mentioned. But right now, again, major Category 5 hurricane, winds of 165 miles an hour and pressure, let me check real quick, down to 934 millibars. So a very strong storm, and no matter what, it's going to take a little bit of time to really weaken the core of this thing. And hence, that's why we have hurricane warnings up now for Jamaica and hurricane watches for the Cayman Islands further on down the road. And likely later on today into tomorrow, we're going to add some watches of hurricane and tropical storm strength up for the Yucatan Peninsula from Belize kind of northward towards Cancun. So again, that's the general track right now up to that point. And then after that, the National Hurricane Center now pointing out, this is likely to get into the Bay of Campeche as a pretty strong tropical storm. And for the first time, technically portions of the mainland United States are in the cone of uncertainty here. Brownsville just getting clipped here. But I think a lot more of the Texas coastline, the southern end of it, will be added to this cone later today and in the coming days. So again, Beryl not done yet, and still a lot of uncertainty and potential impacts, potentially even directly to the United States after the Yucatan Peninsula. And again, this is quite a different spaghetti output than we saw yesterday, at least in the long run. We've seen, trends that have really begun to, pull this a little bit further north and hook it now a little bit sooner and quicker towards the Texas coastline. And even some of those trends overnight bring areas as far east as Louisiana into potential impacts on down the road. So that's something we're going to watch for sure. It's something that we'll have to see as a trend or not. Now, we're kind of in prime windshield wiper effect time frame here. What I mean by that is just a lot of the times, kind of within about 5 days out or so, we like to see the models kind of sway back and forth. Last night, most of these spaghetti plots had this just kind of barreling into Mexico like this. Now this morning, a little bit more kind of upwards towards Texas, like we're seeing here. And obviously, that is going to play or pay big dividends in who sees what impacts. But again, it's very possible we could see, a sway back south later today, or maybe this is a start of a trend, and maybe by the time we get into tomorrow, landfall might even look more like this, closer towards Louisiana. Still a lot of possibilities here, kind of once we get towards 5 to 7 days out from now. All right, very briefly talking about what is causing this track uncertainty and where exactly, or I guess what atmospheric conditions are at play here that might help us kind of be able to decode this a little bit more. And quite honestly, it's all going to come down to this ridge over the southeast and a trough that is on the way. So this is getting into Thursday morning of the 4th of July. I'm just going to draw a couple areas on your map. This area is circled in pink. That is what would be Beryl at this point. I know it doesn't look very strong here, but trust me, that's Beryl, and likely still at hurricane strength at that point. Up to the north, though, what we have in the jet stream is a trough digging down out of Canada. And this is going to be very important in where Beryl goes. Generally speaking, and I'll even draw one more thing on the map here for you in black, high pressure here. So if we just look at the overall steering currents, high pressure wants to continue to send Beryl westward and limit northward progress. And that, is something we're confident in up through about Friday. Again, that's going to push it into the Yucatan. But after that, notice what happens here. This trough, that area I drew in blue there, kind of begins to dive southward, getting into the weekend here. And now this trough looks much more potent and getting much further south. And at this point, that high pressure weakening, and there's a very real possibility, and an even likely one at this point, that this trough kind of picks up Beryl a little bit here and tries to drag it northward towards the Texas coastline. Now, how strong this trough is, how far south it gets, and how quickly it's moving is going to be very important for exactly, how this impacts the track of Beryl. And if I back this up towards the beginning, this trough currently is, kind of still just meandering pretty far up over the northern United States. So we've got time to watch it. But again, just notice how it is expected to get stronger, dig further south, and eventually, again, likely pulling Beryl further north here. On this run of this model, again showing that landfall down near Mexico, but again it could pull it far enough north that we get a Texas landfall, and I wouldn't even completely rule it out. It's unlikely right now, but I wouldn't completely rule out even maybe closer towards a Louisiana landfall if this trough gets strong enough and kind of plays towards the right direction. So we'll see. But again, we've got time to monitor it, and I'll show you some more spaghetti models here towards the end of the video, kind of all of the different possible scenarios, and I will mention the strength of Beryl is also going to be very important to this overall track. In fact, just because Beryl has been a little bit stronger this morning since maybe we originally expected, it's already jogged a little bit further north than maybe originally modeled, and you could even see that on satellite if I go back just a little bit here. We'll use water vapor loop here. You'll notice Beryl kind of definitely having some westward momentum, but you're getting these northerly jogs to it, and it's not going to take many more of those northerly jogs before we are at the latitude of Jamaica here. So, definitely something we're going to need to watch out for. And every little wobble counts, I guess, is kind of the message to send there. All right. So intensity. Let's talk about intensity now. We talked about track. So again, shear is going to be a problem. We do have a bit of an upper level trough here kind of digging down into portions of the Caribbean. That is leading to very unfavorable conditions shear-wise for tropical cyclone intensification or development over portions of the western Caribbean and then north of there towards Hispaniola and the islands. Now, right now, this shear is struggling to do a lot to Beryl, and in fact, it could arguably kind of be helping to ventilate it a little bit here on the northern end, but I think its luck is going to run out, and eventually Beryl here circled is going to move into this patch of red, which should again help to weaken it from Category 5 to likely 4 by the time today is over, and hopefully to a 3 by the time we're getting into tomorrow afternoon when impacting Jamaica, and you'll just notice that here on the models. Again, getting into Wednesday afternoon, a pretty big area of some stronger shear showing up here over, again, portions of the Western Caribbean, over Jamaica, Cuba, and even the Bahamas. Again, helping to weaken Beryl some, but unfortunately, that shear isn't going to last forever, and in fact, I expect it'll probably even weaken up a little bit by the time Beryl approaches the Yucatan a little bit more here, and again, getting into Friday morning is a likely landfall time near the Yucatan Peninsula. and again, conditions could become a little bit more favorable. So if I had to kind of, let's actually go back a couple maps here and talk about it on this map. I think overall the trends here that the National Hurricane Center, I think they're doing a good job of showing overall intensity. Again, probably at about peak intensity right now. Slow weakening trend up near Jamaica and even past Jamaica. But I think once we get kind of towards this last little section, this last kind of 12 to 24 hours of Beryl's journey towards the Yucatan, I think we could kind of level off that weakening a little bit and maybe even try to re-strengthen the storm just a little bit on approach towards the Yucatan, and then likely making landfall as a hurricane still, potentially Category 2. I wouldn't rule out a Category 3 at that point, but a strong Category 1 at least looks pretty likely right now for landfall there near the Yucatan. So again, that is important to note. All right, let's do the part I think everyone likes the most. Let's dive into some models here and show some potential tracks and potential intensity outputs here. And we'll start with the HWRF, which is a hurricane model. It does a pretty good job here at forecasting these things. It's a model built for hurricanes specifically. So again, think it's doing a pretty good job throughout the day today. You'll notice slight weakening trends in Beryl, bringing that pressure back up towards about 950 and even closer towards 960 ish by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, and brings us just south of Jamaica and just skirts the island on the southern end there and weakens it a pretty good bit. Again, tomorrow Beryl going to be fighting some shear and also some land interaction with Jamaica. Could bring this back down to, again, a weak major hurricane, potentially even just a Category 2 or 1. And that trend continues, although weakening again slows down over the 4th of July here past Jamaica, and then even some slight re-strengthening on approach to the Yucatan, as I mentioned here, for our Friday, morning landfall there. Now after that, again, gonna weaken some as it crosses over land, but by the time we're getting overnight Friday into Saturday, Beryl right back over very hot ocean waters, and likely shear going to be relatively tame. Definitely some shear we're gonna be fighting here, but tame enough that we could see a re-strengthening of Beryl once again on approach towards the Mexico or Texas coastline, and this gets us to Sunday morning, July 7th. You'll notice we've got a hurricane here approaching the Brownsville area, although again this is as far out as this model goes, so could do something like this, could do something like this, could even really try to turn north and do something like that, all depending on that high pressure and trough that we mentioned earlier. So that's one model. Another model I'll show you is the HAFS model, or HAFS, however you would like to pronounce it. But again, doing a pretty good job showing overall weakening today and into tomorrow on approach to Jamaica. And then again, kind of levels out that weakening trend and re-strengthens it some on approach to the Yucatan. Again, landfall here early Friday morning there, and then back out over the Gulf here just in time for Friday afternoon or evening. And we once again see a slight strengthening trend, and then this model really strengthens it here towards the end of its run, again right near Brownsville, Texas, again, and moving northward just a little. And this would be a major hurricane approaching the southern Texas coastline. So again, don't want you to freak out, but know this is a possibility that we need to watch out for. And one more model I will show you is the NavGem, which for some reason isn't quite loading the last couple of hours, but that'll be all right. We'll show it to you anyway. So yeah, here we go. NavGem, kind of getting ahead of myself there. But again, I think it's doing good with an overall track and intensity direction. Now, ignore the actual numbers. Obviously, this storm is a lot stronger than 1,000 millibars right now. But you'll notice, it takes us right over the southern shores of Jamaica, and then, eventually towards the Yucatan. Again, slight re-strengthening towards the Yucatan. Landfall probably near Category 2, maybe Category 3 at that point. And then back over the Gulf into overnight Friday, Saturday morning on this model, so timing a little different. But then again begins a re-strengthening trend as this moves towards the Texas-Mexico coastline in the long run. So obviously something we need to watch out for there. I'm going to pull up something on the fly here and see if we have updated 18Z spaghetti models. Not quite yet, but that's all right. So again, those are some models I think that are doing an alright job. Now I'm going to show you some ensembles and just show you why we still have some uncertainty here in the forecast. And we'll start with our overnight European ensembles. Again, just look at the spread here in the members. for a potential landfall. Obviously, pretty confident up towards Jamaica, and in fact, I would really ignore these southern members. I would really focus on this kind of black line northbound. I think these are handling the model a lot better. And kind of notice what happens. Those northern members are stronger with the storm. Again, stronger storms like to jog a little bit further north here. And because of that, these same block of members bring this over the northern tip of the Yucatan, so a little less time overland, getting back over the ocean a little quicker, and also curve this storm much quicker. So you'll notice we've kind of got two camps here. We've got some members that suggest, anywhere from Louisiana to Texas landfall as a hurricane, maybe major hurricane, and then our other members are weaker and bring this down towards the Mexico coastline. So right now, if I had to lean one direction, honestly, I think these northern members are probably onto a trend. I think they're probably handling this a little bit better, just considering they've got the strength right, so they're probably going to get the track a little more right as well, compared to those southern members, which are weaker. Now, that's the European. Again, a lot of ensemble members really shifted north overnight. Going to have to watch to see if that's a trend. GFS model also kind of agrees. Look at this big cluster of ensemble members bringing this towards the Texas coastline and maybe even towards the Louisiana coastline as a hurricane. So, again, definitely going to need to watch that. It's a trend that could, play a lot of impacts on the forecast here for our friends on down the road towards Texas and Louisiana. So that's what I'm watching right now in the models. Again, some pretty interesting, jogs overnight in strength and track, especially here. But right now, nonetheless, Beryl remains a very strong, powerful Category 5 storm, and will continue that way for the next couple of hours before a slow weakening trend towards Jamaica. And then after that, a lot more questions to answer as it kind of strengthens towards the Yucatan, and then especially once it gets out over the Gulf. How far north does it get? How much shear are we dealing with? Is there dry air to deal with? A lot of questions that we will definitely need to answer. Good news, though, is we got some time to do that, and I will definitely do my best to do that as we get a little bit closer here. Alrighty, well, y'all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.